I'm glad everyone is here, and life isn't perfect, so we're all here together, and it's always a good opportunity to check in what is being brought up or what is being stirred inside of oneself when everything doesn't go according to plan. So let's just take it from here. So just wanted to wish everyone a happy new year, first of all, and I'm really glad to see you all. So thank you for being here. Thank you very much. I hope the year has treated you well so far. So thank you. We're just going to start with some mindful movement, and I think Z said earlier that Dee would prefer to stay seated. So we can do that. It's nice to have options in terms of what type of movement we provide. It doesn't always have to be standing, so that it can accommodate more people. So just take a moment to find a comfortable seat for you where you can have both feet firmly on the ground. Lauren is getting a nice cushion to support her well-being. That's great. So we'll just begin by shaking out our hands, maybe sighing out of the mouth a few times to let go of any tension that might have arisen in this first part of our show tonight. Maybe the arms overhead. And then just maybe add some other movement, maybe some punching, anything that needs to be released. Any other movement, your own little dance. You can do that standing up like Elaine. It's all good. Standing, seated. I'm not sure about lying down, but it's all good. Just maybe shaking the head from side to side like Bruce. Just maybe, and then shaking maybe from the heart center, just, moving the arms forward from the heart away a few times, just letting it all go. And then just release and come to stillness and just notice the movement from the shaking to stillness. Maybe closing the eyes for a moment, just absorbing this first movement into your being. And then you can continue to do this seated. I'm just going to stand up because it might be easier for you to follow what I'm doing. And so we're just going to bring our hands to the heart center. And then as you exhale, just lace your hands together and then press them forward, maybe slightly releasing the head forward, bowing in. Inhale, stretching the arms up overhead. And then exhaling the arms out to the side and slowly back down with control. Inhaling the hands back to the heart. And then exhaling, lacing the hands together, pressing them forward away from the head, rounding the back. Inhale, reach the arms up. And then exhaling out to the side and slowly back down. Inhaling, hands to the heart. Exhaling, lacing the hands together, stretching the arms forward, releasing the head. Inhaling, arms up. And then exhale out to the side and back down. Let's just do this 2 more times. Inhaling, hands to namaste. Exhaling, lacing the hands together, stretching them forward, release the head. Inhaling, reach up. Exhaling out to the side and slowly back down. Last one, inhaling to the heart. Exhaling, lacing the hands and stretching the arms forward. Inhale, reach up. And then exhale, slowly releasing the arms back down. And just take a moment again to come into stillness after the movement, maybe checking, scanning through the body, feeling any sensations that might be present, that are obvious. And just welcoming whatever is present here with your breath. Maybe breathing more deeply into any tight places that you're noticing. And then with a sense of relaxation and letting go with each out breath. And then we're going to bring the hands back to the heart center as you open your eyes. Let's inhale the arms up, lacing the hands together again, just really stretching the palms upward. And then as you exhale, slowly stretch over to one side. Just shifting your whole body weight over to that side you're stretching in, pressing the opposite foot down into the earth a bit more. And then just sending the body up and down the side body. Deep opening here for the lungs and the heart. Let's take 3 more breaths here. And then inhale, we're going to reach the arms up again overhead. As you exhale, come over to the other side, just stretching in the opposite direction. Making sure that your feet are still firmly planted on the ground. And you can also, if the interlacing feels uncomfortable, you can have the arms separate and just have the palms facing one another if that's easier for you. Just keep deepening your breaths here, a few more rounds. And then inhale, slowly reaching both arms back up, coming back to the center. And as you exhale, very slowly and mindfully release your arms back down. And just take a few breaths again to center yourself. And as you have your feet firmly planted on the ground, still perhaps hip width apart, you're just going to begin to twist from side to side. So perhaps letting the hands touch at the area of the hip and the other arm behind as you begin. Just gently swaying from side to side, touching the hips with one hand and the other one in back of you. It's a nice gentle sway from side to side. And then perhaps moving the hands up to the outside of the belly, one hand to the outside of the belly, the other in back. And then we're going to continue up to the height of the chest, one hand touching either side of the outside of the chest, the other one still behind us. And then we'll move all the way up to the top of the shoulder, one hand touching the top of the shoulder, the other one behind, as you continue to just stretch from side to side. And then we'll slowly let that movement come back to stillness as you return to the center. And just take a moment to feel yourself grounding down again. Let gravity really ground you down into the earth, letting all the muscles in the body relax. And then very slowly we'll make our way back to a seated posture. I'm really glad to see everyone here tonight. It feels like it's been a long time since we last met here. And so just glad to see all your faces. And I wanted to talk a little bit this evening about karma and intention. Z and I just attended a almost week-long Buddhist meditation retreat that actually took place on Zoom with our favorite Buddhist nuns from the Aloka Vihara in Northern California. A couple of you might be familiar with their journey and their path, but it's really, if you're interested, you can Google Aloka Vihara. They have a beautiful history of how they made it to the United States from Europe and how they're practicing and manifesting the teachings here in the United States. So it's the first order of Theravadan Buddhist nuns that were able to fully ordain after that tradition had been lost for for more than 1,000 years. Women in that tradition of Buddhism were not able to ordain, and these women were able to bring that re-alive, re-live in that tradition basically. So it's a beautiful journey that brought them here to the United States, and they have been living here for more than a decade now. So inspired by their teachings, I wanted to talk in particular about, as I said, karma and intention. And I think all spiritual traditions or all religious traditions have something that might be called commitments or basic guidelines for wholesome behavior. In Buddhism, they're actually called the 5 precepts. And in order to formally become a Buddhist, you can actually take these 5 precepts in the presence of nuns and monks in a temple or at a Buddhist center that is offered several times a year. For example, Thich Nhat Hanh offers that in his tradition to the lay disciples. So just wanted to give you a basic sense of what they are in case you're not familiar with them. And like I said, I think they are very similar in other spiritual traditions. And these are just basically invitations for wholesome actions and behaviors in one's life. They're not commandments. There's just an intention behind them to refrain from certain actions that could lead to harmful results or harmful impact on others and even oneself. So the first one of these 5 precepts is refraining from killing and harming other beings. And traditionally, this precept has just included the refraining from killing. But in modern times, a lot of the centers, the Buddhist centers and traditions, especially here in the West, are also beginning to really include this as an invitation for non-harming towards oneself and others. So not just refraining from killing, but also anything that might arise within you as to how you would like to refrain from harming in one's life. And I know that for myself, I'm on the path of becoming a person who is not eating, for example, the flesh of an animal. And this is just something that I have as an intention for myself. And I do still eat fish sometimes, but I really try to refrain from consuming any animal products where I know that they came from places where animals were harmed or tortured, like in a farm situation where they're kept in tiny spaces. And I know that these animals have gone through tremendous suffering in order to become food for me. So that's just something personally that I have incorporated, what it means to me to refrain from harming others and having compassion towards others. And certainly, you can think of your own things that might be included. And I'm just using myself as an example here in terms of what it means to me to refrain or try my best to refrain from non-harming and having compassion for others. And then the second one is to refrain from taking what hasn't been freely offered. And wanted to let you know, this is kind of embarrassing for me to share with you, but in terms of stealing, this is obviously an invitation of refraining from stealing. But for a few years now, when I'm in the section at Sprouts, in the organic section for the broccoli, and they come with the broccoli crowns and the broccoli stems, what I have done is I've actually cut off the stems and left the stems behind and just take the crowns. And I have always known that this is not right action, and still I have done it anyway. So even as a long-term practitioner, I have not been able to refrain from this, what hasn't been freely offered. So after this retreat that I just participated in, I really set an intention to refrain from doing that. And I was in Sprouts today, and it really almost felt like, oh my God, I don't like the stem, but I'm going to buy it anyway because the stem and the broccoli crown come together. So I could feel like the sting in my heart, like, oh no, I really have the intention to buy both, the way it's being offered. So I started that today for the first time. So to me, that's an example of really working on not taking what hasn't been freely offered, that I'm offering from my own personal experience. And then the third of the 5 precepts is to refrain from sexual misconduct. And in this case, I just rather like to offer, I remember Jack Kornfield always saying when he is speaking in an audience, and he said, raise your hand if you have never made a fool of yourself when it comes to sexuality. So I think that's all I need to say when it comes to this particular precept. And then the next one, the 4th one, is to refrain from wrong or harmful speech. And here I would just like to offer a few reflections on what right speech might look like. So these are some reflections or some inquiries that you might want to ask yourself when it comes to right speech. And one is this speech true and useful? In other words, when I'm interacting with someone and maybe I have a gripe with someone in the moment, is this speech true and useful, what I want to tell the other person? And also, is this to the benefit of the other person if I'm sharing that? And another one is it not harsh, but rather with kind intent? And another inquiry that you might pose to yourself is, does it help us to connect? Does it help us to connect? And the last one, in terms of a question you might pose to yourself when it comes to right speech and interacting with another person is, for example, again, if there's a conflict that you perceive with the other person, you really want to tell them, what you see is going on here. And you might want to ask yourself, is the timing right for what I wish to say to this person? Is this the right timing to bring this up, to have a wholesome confrontation or a wholesome way of processing, what you want to process with the other person? Is the timing right? And then the 5th one of the 5 precepts, of 5 Buddhist precepts, is to refrain from taking intoxicants that could cloud the mind and lead to heedless actions. So for the monks and nuns, obviously, the Buddha's directive was to completely refrain from taking any kind of intoxicants or alcohol or other types of drugs. And then with lay practitioners, I think this particular precept has been softened to say, as long as, what you're drinking or inhaling or, doesn't lead you to any type of heedless or reckless behavior or clouds the mind so that you don't have clarity of speech and action and clear seeing anymore. So it's been softened for lay practitioners. So this is just an invitation for you to reflect on, especially if you're not a Buddhist practitioner. I see these very much as universal offerings or universal reflections on wholesome behavior. And I feel like all of them pretty much can apply in any tradition, and you might want to reflect on in your particular religious tradition or spiritual tradition, how these might be phrased in your tradition, and maybe even compare them to see how similar or not similar they are. Might be interesting. So I wanted to talk about the two types of karma this evening also. And one of the nuns that Z and I were on retreat with reminded me of this, because I had actually not had that in my mind so much, at least recently, that there's two types of karma. And the one is actions from the past that come to fruition in this present moment. And you can think of any kind of unwholesome action that you might have committed, that all of a sudden now you're feeling the consequences of that. Or it could also be wholesome action that now have ripened and are coming to fruition. And this type of karma was already thought about and introduced as a concept in India long before the Buddha's time. In other words, it already existed. And then the part that the Buddha brought to it or added to it is the part of intention. And I will talk about intention as it relates to action or karma in a moment. But I wanted to talk first about the second type of karma. So the first one was actions from the past that are now coming to fruition in the moment, in the present moment. And then the second one is how we relate to the karma that has come to fruition. For example, if something really challenging has come to our lives, or we're going through a period of real misfortune, do we then pity ourselves and ask, oh my God, why me? Why is this happening to me when something challenging has happened? Or do we respond to the situation with acceptance and humility, basically bowing to, this is how it is now, and how can I move forward in a wholesome way? How can I meet this challenge and be present to it and see my path forward in a wholesome way from here on? And the same also applies for something positive that might be coming into our lives. And, does that lead us to become or invoke a feeling of grandiosity in our lives, becoming greedy and wanting to bring in more and more and more of this beautiful thing that's entered our life? So does it lead to greed? Or do we then wish to share this good fortune with others? So these are all ways that we can relate to the karma that has come to fruition in our lives. And I thought that this was really telling as it relates to karma, that the Dalai Lama was once asked which of these two types of teachings that are really important in Buddhism are more important. Is it emptiness, which is actually considered the highest teaching in Tibetan Buddhism? And when we speak of emptiness in Buddhism, we can talk about that for days, but it's basically the idea of empty of a separate self, that there's nothing in this universe that solidly exists or exists just by itself. It always exists in relation to others. So he was asked, is this the most important teaching, or is it the teaching of karma? And the Dalai Lama very clearly answered, it's karma that's most important as a teaching in Buddhism. So I thought that was really, really telling of what a value he himself placed on karma, on one's action, on one's positive or one's negative action. Are they wholesome or unwholesome? So just then to bring in this concept of intention, or adding intention to one's action. And so that's the part that the Buddha actually added to the understanding of karma, to action, any type of action that we commit. So here he said in one of the remembrances that he wanted his disciples to reflect on every day, he said, when they, or people in general, when they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action, and inherit its results. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs. So in Buddhism then, and I'm sure in other spiritual traditions as well, it then becomes really important to set and cultivate wholesome intentions for one's life. And in Buddhism, what we often focus on here is when we set an intention for ourselves, maybe for the new year, for this next day, for this next week, or as it relates to interfacing with other beings. We like to set an intention to wish for the welfare of all beings, and also to dedicate our practice to the benefit of all beings, and for all beings, wishing for all beings to be free from harm. So I thought it would be really powerful to put up a couple of pictures of two beings, one of whom as an adult ended up probably creating one of the worst karmas that has ever been created and really manifesting evil in this world. And the other child grew up to be a person who manifested great love in the world. And so I just wanted for Z, who has more technical abilities than I do, to put up the picture of the first child. And it might take a minute, so if you could have patience with us again, that would be really appreciated. So I don't know if we can make it a little bit bigger, or if you and your screen can make it a little bit bigger. It would be really important to take a look at this child. Can you see the child pretty well? Okay, that's good. All right. So just wanted you to look at this child for a minute and just taking in this being. And maybe just sense what you're feeling when you're looking at this person. And when we reflect on a person's really unwholesome action, we might ask ourselves, what leads a person to grow up to become who they are? What shaped this person's environment and upbringing? What were the causes and conditions in his society that led this person to manifest such evil karma? And this is not to condone at all this person's behavior, but just taking in this person as a child, and then to know that this person grew up to become Adolf Hitler. So this is a picture of Adolf Hitler as a child. And then Z, if you could please put up the next picture, that would be great. So just taking a moment again to take in this child. And we can perhaps reflect that I, like this person, have the seeds of love for others in me. I, like this person, have the capacity to respond with nonviolence in the world, even in the face of oppression and cruelty. And so this picture is of Mahatma Gandhi as a child. And as a lot of you might know, he became very famous for um, satyagraha, which was a policy of passive political resistance, especially especially against British rule in India. So I think that these two manifestations of beings, they remind me of a story of that a Native American grandfather told to his grandchild about a good wolf and bad wolf. And basically, he told his grandson that in all of us, there's a battle raging, a war raging within us between a good wolf and a bad wolf. And he's asking his grandson, who will win this battle inside of us? And the answer that he gave his grandson is that it depends on what seeds we water, the good ones or the bad ones. So if we have time at the end of our second hour, I would love for us to read together the reflections on universal well-being, because they all connect us with intentions and karma that come from the Buddhist tradition. But I think for now, enough has been said. And for the rest of the first hour, I would like to turn it over to Z for a guided meditation that also relates to this particular theme this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. So powerful to see those photos. You're not hearing me.
I can hear you. I think she just wants it louder. I think
Okay.
it's what, yeah.
Just
But I can hear you well.
I'll move the computer closer to my face. So I invite you to come into some sort of meditation posture that allows you to feel both energized and relaxed, if that's possible. So maybe an upright spine, but not too rigid. Maybe invite your shoulders to relax. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, please do so. And if you'd rather have your eyes open, then perhaps you can just gaze down on one spot so that your mind is not wandering. And if your feet are on the ground, maybe take a moment just to connect with the feeling of your feet touching. Or maybe if you're sitting cross-legged, your feet are still touching your cushion, your chair. And just notice that sense of support. Maybe letting that be a reminder of all the ways that we're supported by the earth. And maybe that feeling of support allows you to relax a little bit more. Nothing to hold on to. You're being held. And maybe you'll feel the support that's offered in the form of breath. Also, just given freely, bountifully, exactly what we need, and it's there without effort. And we can also relax and just receive the breath. And I realize too that for some people the breath does not feel relaxing, and that's okay. You can feel the breath as it is and still just let it be. And now I invite you to call to mind an intention for your meditation tonight. It could be something as simple as, I intend to remain present to my experience. Maybe something more lofty like, may my practice help free all beings from suffering. Or any one of the myriad possibilities in between. Just seeing what will serve you in keeping you grounded and focused and aligned with what your heart is needing right now. And we can use that intention much like we use the object of our mindfulness as an anchor, kind of pressing the refresh button on the screen throughout the practice and calling to mind the intention again and again. Letting it re-energize you. And then see if the breath is comfortable for you to remain as your anchor. Perhaps the feeling of your feet or the posture that you're in or the sensation in the hands, the buttocks on your cushion or chair. See what feeling is both ever present and changing that you might rest your awareness on. And we'll spend some time, several minutes, at first just being with our anchor in this way, the breath or whatever you've chosen. And that, of course, is its own intention. I intend to keep my mind connected to the experience of my breath or my other anchor. You can kind of use the intention to tether you to your meditation object. Because, face it, the mind will stray. Just like a dog straying on a leash. If you're holding on to the leash, it doesn't go very far. Always coming back. So we'll silently spend the next few minutes, several minutes, just with the object of your meditation. And then I'll give more instructions in a bit. You might also notice the attitude in the heart or mind with which you're observing the object. The state of mind creates kamma or karma. As Bettina mentioned, it's not just our actions, but our intentions. And so if we meet our experience with a wholesome mind state, that's good karma. If we meet it with an aversive mind state, karma. So know that as you practice, even though it feels like you're not doing anything and you're not creating an action, because karma means action with intention, the paying of attention is an action. So you can do it in a way that generates good karma or not good karma. So just see what your heart can cultivate as you bring awareness to your meditation object. Notice when the mind wanders. What response you may have to the wandering. How you respond creates karma. You can just notice the mind has wandered and gently bring it back like a sweet tug on the leash. Or you might yank it, or yell at it, or be irritated. Your response is an action. See if it can be a wholesome one. Perhaps even delighting in the noticing that the mind had wandered, because the moment that you notice it, your awareness is already back. Cause to celebrate. Ah, I've returned home. And other things might come into your awareness. And you might notice how you respond to those things. We all know the Rumi poem, A Guest House, so everything is welcome. Doesn't mean you need to invite those things in for a cup of tea and have a lengthy conversation. You can just say, oh, nice of you to stop by, but I'm a little busy right now paying attention to my meditation object. But nice to see you. Thank you for your visit. How you respond can be wholesome or not wholesome. remembering that you're supported by your intention and by the earth, and also by the Dharma and by the Sangha. And for the last portion of this meditation, I'd like to do something a little different. See if you'll indulge me. I'm going to share the precepts again. And this time, what I would invite you to do, stay in your meditation. Feel your body. Be aware of any subtle reactions that you have as you hear the words that I'm going to read. And just try to get a sense of how each of these 5 precepts lands in your heart and mind. Just to get an idea if there's a struggle against these teachings or these guidances. It might be good to know, might be useful to see what's blocking you from virtue, from wholesome acts, from living a wholesome life, from creating good karma. So I'll just read them one by one and just give you time to not so much think about them, but just feel how they land. See if there's any resistance. See if there's a sense of, oh yeah, I can relax with that, or whatever may arise. I don't know. Let's see. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature or creating harm for any being. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature or causing harm to any being. Sometimes memories can come to mind of times when you didn't do this and how that felt. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not freely offered. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not freely offered. That could mean walking on a path that has a no trespassing sign. Doesn't have to be stealing. Could be taking somebody's time that you know they don't really have to give. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Maybe you've unfortunately been on the receiving end of another sexual misconduct, and through that experience the importance of this precept. I undertake the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicants that lead to heedlessness. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicants that lead to heedlessness. And based on the sensations, thoughts, memories, images, perceptions that may have arisen as you listen to those words. If you like, if you wish, I invite you to see if there's one of these precepts that you would like to perhaps set an intention to work on more strongly. Of course, we're all invited to have all of them on our radar, their practices, but maybe there's one that needs a little more attention, a little more support, a little more care around. Just see if you'd like to give yourself that gift of purifying your karma in that particular area. And really give that gift to the world. Thank you for your kind attention.